Thank you, thank you. The reason that I created this podcast is because I want to feel better. So many of the right-wing talk show hosts that I've listened to over the years make me feel worse, more anxious, more fearful, angrier. And I want to feel better, and I want the people who listen to my podcast to feel better after having listened to it than they did at the beginning.
I will say this. I just hate the fact that nobody can let anything pass in this country without getting partisan about it. Like the fact that she was in the kitchen. That's all I heard on MSNBC. They're in the kitchen. Like they want women back in the kitchen. Okay, I have a kitchen.
Yeah.
Everybody has a goddamn kitchen. It's not about the kitchen.
They were leaning into the mom thing.
Hey, well, I mean, it's just you. And then on the other side, I see that when he was sparring, Joe, about the illegal immigration, and he called somebody an illegal.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Nancy Pelosi, she said, well, you should call them undocumented.
But it's not a big deal.
Right.
Because Ilhan Omar said no human is illegal. Oh, drama much.
Yeah.
You know, Jesus Christ. And I thought this is where the Democrat Party should go if they want to win. It's no big deal.
Right.
Stop taking the bait. Stop making an issue out of every...
Good morning. It's Tuesday, Trump Tuesday, April the 16th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have the patriotic shorts, motivation, Bishop Barron, Ayn Rand, the 33 strategies of war, and a little something from Donald Trump. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I should not change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen.
Western sky, we formed a new dominion, our land of liberty. The world shall know we're masters here, then hasten on the day. Huzzah, 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 huzzah for free America. Huzzah, 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 huzzah for free America. Lift up your hands, good people, and swear without mistake. The wretch that would ensnare you shall lay his snares in vain. And should dishonor all his horse, will meet him here and there. And fight to shout and shout and fight for free America. And fight and shout and shout and fight for free America. So God will rights Americans, the men to learn a sway. Oppose, 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 oppose for free America. For free America.
Thank you. And now, a little guns.
Hickok 45 here with an AK, and as you know, famous for being durable, reliable, and it happens to be 30 caliber. M16. Oh, very accurate, very lightweight, and it happens to be 22 caliber. Oh, yeah. So, M16, AK, what's your preference? Life is good. Hickok 45 here. I always wondered, since the 30-30 Winchester is the most popular deer cartridge of all time, why doesn't somebody chamber it in a little pocket revolver? They finally did. Need I tell you, life is good.
In 1999, they sponsored a publicized attempt by shooter Jerry Michalek to challenge Ed McGivern's speed shooting record set back in 1932. Using a Smith & Wesson Performance Center-built 8-shot revolver, Michalek attempted to both outshoot McGivern and set 2 new world records.
All right, you want to film this one?
Yes, sir.
Go, Jerry!
And in 108-degree heat, I believe it was, down in Mississippi in front of a very supportive audience, he did it. I mean, he did 8 rounds in 1 second on one target.
Shooter ready. Stand by. Okay, all right.
He did 8 rounds on 4 targets in 1.06. And then he did the 6 shots, a reload, and 6 shots in 2.99 seconds.
Stand by.
.99.
Hey, Bubba! All right.
Hickok 45 here with a Glock 49. We're almost at 50. Anyway, the 49 has essentially a Glock 17 length slide, and it has a Glock 19 compact frame. That's what makes it a little different, whether you like it or not, right? Let's see if it shoots. That feels pretty good. Yeah, for a hybrid. Life is good.
My name is Jerry Michalek. Guns are what I do. When I was a kid, if somebody would have said, "Hey, Jerry, I'm going to pay you to shoot, and you can do it all day long, every day," I would have said, "Oh, come on, you're lying to me." It sure beats working for a living. I used to work for a living. Get some! My job is to shoot. Did he get lucky or what? Get some! So, you want to shoot fast, huh? Waking up today. He did it. He did 8 rounds in 1 second on one target.
rounds on 4 targets in 1.06. The 6 shots, a reload, and 6 shots in 2.99 seconds.
Standby.
2.99.
A lot of people ask me, well, how do I get to the next level? Well, you get to the next level by being the first one on the range and the last one to leave.
Hickok 45 here. You know, sometimes you just need a shotgun, a 12 gauge. And you know, in these YouTube Shorts videos, you don't have a lot of time, so we're going to help along there by using some short shells. That makes sense? We are geniuses. Yeah. Short shells for a short video. All right. Told you it'd be short. Life is good.
Spitter ready? Stand by. Twist the mention like I'm fully in effect. I break a record when I get the revolver. Six shots, reload, what's the time? Twist the mention like I'm fully in effect. I break a record when I get the revolver. 8 shots in a second. He shoot, I spit at 2.99 seconds, and we got the competition falling behind. When I get up on the trigger, I be slapping it and make a pitter patter when I pull it. When I put it, I be breaking the record the way I shoot and reload.
Hey, John Hickok here. I just put a 45 ACP conversion kit in my full auto transferable mini Uzi, and we're going to shoot it for the first time and see if it works. I have no idea if it's even going to work or what it's going to be like. But for those of you really quickly that follow my stand-up and know I've been doing that for the last 7 years and want to see me live, I'm going to be at Huntsville, Alabama Stand-Up Live Comedy Club on August 25th with Steve Jessup, Lawnmower Steve Jessup. And on August 26th, I'm going to be at the Fort Worth Hyenas Comedy Club with John Reap for 2 shows, 8:30 and 10:30. So make sure you check those out. More info in the description if you missed any of that. All right, let's shoot this thing and see if it works. All right, open bolt, full auto, 45 ACP, 16-round magazine. Hey, it worked. Let's try this other mag and see if it also works. It's a pro mag, so it might not. Hey, look at that, it works.
I know what you're thinking. If 10 rounds is good, 27 has to be better. And that's one thing about the 1911 platform. There's 1,000 variations of it. This is a 9mm high capacity, 27 rounds. I'm going to see if I can get them all one continuous string of fire and see how long it takes or how short it takes to get these rounds on target. So here we go, guys. Here we go. That's almost like a job right there. I saw that was about $60 worth of ammo. I don't know if you noticed it, but so actually, guys, there it is. That was actually 27 rounds on target. The total time was a 3.71 hundredths of a second. And if you break that down, if you divide it by 26, is really what you're counting is 26 rounds. At average 14 hundredths of a second per shot for 26 rounds on target. So, guys, that's I give you an idea of some of the different variations of the 1911. But we're going to do some multiple target stuff, and we're going to race this same gun.
Hickok 45 here. I'm going to show you how to blow up a watermelon with a Howdah pistol. And how to blow up the stand. Oh, yeah. Life is good.
And like the man said, life is good. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the patriotic shorts.
On March 26, 2024, two B-1 bombers were intercepted by Russian MiG-31 Foxbats while flying over the Barents Sea, not far from the Russian border. And this was not the first time a Russian MiG has intercepted a U.S. aircraft in recent days. Just 2 days earlier, another MiG-31 intercepted two more B-1 bombers near the Russian border. What were the American bombers doing so close to Russia? It turns out they were headed from an air base in Texas to Spain to form part of Bomber Task Force 24-2. But on their way to Western Europe, they passed through international airspace over the Barents Sea, where the MiG-31s appeared. When that happened, the bombers quickly adjusted course and continued on to their destination, while the Russian pilots returned to their own base. Fortunately, it turned out to be a routine incident since the bombers never violated Russian airspace. But considering the Arctic's growing geostrategic importance, these encounters are bound to continue into the future.
You know, war is hell. But one of the benefits of the Vietnam War is how people view the military now. When we came home from Vietnam, there were no parades. We were told when we got on the plane, get out of your uniforms, because when you land in San Francisco or wherever you landed, don't expect to get welcomed home. Compare that to today. You can't turn on an NFL football game without soldiers, and I envy these guys for that. But that's one of the lessons that the nation learned.
I didn't care anything about it. I still don't. That's why I don't wear it. You know, I'm not a Medal of Honor recipient. I'm a United States Marine that received the Medal of Honor. It's no different than a Purple Heart that I was awarded. It's no different than all the other medals that I was awarded. It's not something that defines me. What defines me is being a United States Marine.
So exactly how many tents and what type of tents did an entire regiment have? By the end of 1862, only wall tents and shelter tents would be allowed on campaigns, not just in the Army of the Potomac, but throughout the United States Army. In fact, General Orders number 153 specified in August 10th of 1862 that, quote, the Army must be prepared to bivouac when on marches away from depots. The allowance of tents, therefore, will be immediately reduced to the following standard, and no other accommodations must be expected until a permanent depot is established. To each full regiment, for the colonel, field staff, and staff officers, 3 wall tents. For all other commissioned officers, 1 shelter tent each. For every 2 non-commissioned officers, soldiers, and officer servants, 1 shelter tent between the 2 of them. So there you have it. 3 wall tents and nothing but shelter halves for everyone else, including commissioned officers.
We almost lost an acting and directing legend before his first role. In 1951, while a private in the Army, 21-year-old Clint Eastwood was a passenger on a U.S. Navy Douglas AD-1 Skyraider en route to Fort Ord, California. The plane developed multiple problems mid-flight. Oxygen supplies dwindled, radios went out, and the unforgiving California fog closed in. With fuel running low, the pilot was forced to ditch the aircraft in the Pacific Ocean near Point Reyes, California. Luckily, both Eastwood and the pilot, Lieutenant Francis Anderson, survived and escaped on separate life rafts. As Eastwood neared the shore, he was knocked off his raft by the waves, forcing him to swim 2 miles to shore in frigid waters, which he later found out was a shark breeding ground. The experience likely contributed to the stoic demeanor and rugged resilience often portrayed in his iconic film roles, cementing his status as a cinematic legend known for facing adversity head-on.
Could Hirohito have intervened earlier? Let's go back more than 5 years. If he intervenes when Japan is overextending in China, is there any chance that he could have succeeded?
I doubt he thought of Japan overextending in China. What expertise does he have? He liked guppies. He likes studying fish in his backyard. He has no expertise. And then, of course, there's the hubris of it all, that we're going to dominate this place. And they look at the Chinese as an absolutely feckless, backward place that's had all these warlord things going on. And it doesn't dawn on them that by their extreme brutality in China, the Chinese finally get it, going, we're not the problem, the Japanese are the problem. And it is what the Japanese do that superglues China and is the great impetus to nation building. You can see parallels with Hitler doing the same thing in Russia. And also right now, Putin's busy canonizing Zelensky and creating a real nation out of Ukraine that's never going to forget the ongoing events.
Yeah.
What would happen if the USA invaded Iran today? A problem in the strategy could change everything. Let me explain. First, with Saudi bases giving support, American Navy ships and Air Force strike groups would launch a huge airstrike on Iran. Iran may have launched ballistic missiles anticipating this, but little would change because of Saudi Arabia's help and the country's strong air defenses. To be able to launch waves of strikes on missile sites, logistical hubs, command centers, and troop barracks, the U.S. Air Force would destroy the enemy's air defenses. However, an aerial assault by itself would not be enough. The U.S. could be forced to think about a ground invasion if it wants to take full power, and one of the main obstacles would be figuring out where to launch one. Although it still carries a huge amount of risk, landing on the coast could be an option. But once inside Iranian territory, the sheer size of the nation would complicate things. They would need up to 1.5 million soldiers to capture the whole country. The U.S. could get help from their allies.
And that was the Patriotic Shorts. Next up, motivation.
Let me introduce you to the concept of success. Ben Franklin was a pretty smart guy, and I want to start with a quote by him. If you do tomorrow what you did today, you will get tomorrow what you got today. You want to know what that means? The average American makes between 3 and 5% more each year. That's the deal. And in today's economy, I'm not sure we're going to make the 3 to 4 to 5% next year as employees. So it takes you 20 years to double your income in America as an average person. That's the mediocrity that we're stuck in life. And then you meet people who have the uncanny ability to double their income in a year, to get promoted 5 times in a year. The ones that beat the system, the ones that conquer it. You've all seen them, haven't you? The difference between them and the ones that don't do that is that they wake up in the morning and they think differently. They understand that if I do tomorrow what I did today, I'm going to get tomorrow what I got today. You want a bigger car? How about a nice house in Tahiti? Sure, would you love a nice house in the hills? We all want better things, don't we? We all want more friends, more stuff, more money, more security, more travel, more enjoyment. If you do the same thing tomorrow that you did today, you're stuck. Stuck. And it doesn't change. And it grows a little at a time. And you get a taste of success. But it's never fast enough. It never excites you. And when it does, it's a good month, or a good 2 months, or a good 3 months, but it doesn't provide a trajectory that creates success. So the first thing I want you to think about today is I want you to wake up tomorrow and do something different. And understand if you do the same damn thing, you're stuck. Just because you did it a certain way yesterday, there's no reason to do it that way today.
You wake up in the morning, you're failing. So you blame the president, you blame Congress, you blame Greece, blame the euro. I mean, construction industry, it's the mayor. Oh, it's the... And you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you're not failing because it's the other guy's fault. Or it's the economy's fault. But if you looked in the mirror and said, I'm failing because of me, you wouldn't like it. And you change that. And I believe the common denominator of failure in any business is excuses. Why are you failing? You never say because of me. Oh, it's the competition. It's the economy. It's the president. It's Congress. If you wake up tomorrow morning and blame your failure on someone or something else, you have no reason to change, do you? It's that son of a fault. Son of a gun! I did everything I could.
But if you woke up in the morning and looked in the mirror and said, I am failing because of me, the decisions that I make, the energy I put in, I'm not passing the blame. If you look in the mirror tomorrow and say that, you will change. Because nobody likes thinking of themselves as a failure. How often does that happen to us in our day-to-day lives? Family, the biggest excuse of all. Time. Every one of those excuses was bullshit, wasn't it? Think about it. Every single one. At the end of the day, winners win. But as long as you don't put it on you, you have no motivation to change it. So in short, if you own your failure, you'll own your success. If you don't own your failure, you'll never dig out. And I find that in any business. Always the common denominator of failure, personally, is excuses. You don't want to be a failure, do you?
And that was a little bit of motivation. Next up, the daily laws.
April 16th. Do not commit to anyone. I would rather be a beggar and single than a queen and married. Queen Elizabeth I. It is the fool who always rushes to take sides. Do not commit to any side or cause but yourself. By maintaining your independence, you become the master of others, playing people against one another, making them pursue you. If you allow people to feel they possess you to any degree, you lose all power over them. By not committing your affections, they will only try harder to win you over. Stay aloof, and you gain the power that comes from their attention and frustrated desire. Daily law. Play the Virgin Queen. Give them hope, but never satisfaction. The 48 Laws of Power, Law 20. Do not commit to anyone.
And that was the Daily Law for April 16th from the Daily Laws by Robert Greene. Next up, Bishop Barron.
Why is there something rather than nothing? It's an ancient perennial question. The point I'd like to make is it's a properly philosophical question. It's not a scientific question, not a question that can be adjudicated by physics, chemistry, or astronomy, because they're always looking at events and objects and measurable states of affairs within a finite contingent system. And that's fine. That's what the sciences are built to do. But when you ask the question we just asked, that's not a deeper level scientific question. It's a different type of question that takes you out of the epistemological framework of the sciences and introduces you to a higher epistemological framework. One of the problems we face is scientism. One of its dimensions is a tendency to see philosophy as primitive science. They wish they could do real science. What they're doing is some kind of underdeveloped science. No, what they're doing is something qualitatively different than what the sciences do. The collapsing of all the epistemic orders into the scientific is one of...
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. And next up, Ayn Rand. Back in a minute. Quote, so long as a concept such as the public interest is regarded as a valid principle to guide legislation, lobbies and pressure groups will necessarily continue to exist. Since there is no such entity as the public, since the public is merely a number of individuals, the idea that the public interest supersedes private interests and rights can have but one meaning, that the interests and rights of some individuals take precedence over the interests and rights of others. Unquote. And that was the Ayn Rand Thought of the Day. Up next, the 33 Strategies of War.
Camouflage.
The ability to blend into the environment is one of the most terrifying forms of military deception. In modern times, Asian armies have proven particularly adept in this art. At the battles of Guadalcanal and Iwo Jima during World War II, American soldiers were astounded at the ability of their Japanese foes to blend into the various terrains of the Pacific theater. By sewing grass, leaves, twigs, and foliage to their uniforms and helmets, the Japanese would merge with the forest. But the forest would incrementally advance, undetected, until it was too late. Nor could the Americans pinpoint the Japanese guns, for their barrels were concealed in natural rock crevices, or were hidden under removable camouflage covers. The North Vietnamese were equally brilliant at camouflage, reinforcing their skills by the use of tunnels and underground chambers that allowed armed men to pop up seemingly anywhere. Worse, in a different kind of camouflage, they could blend into the civilian population. Preventing your enemies from seeing you until it is too late is a devastating way to control their perceptions. The camouflage strategy can be applied to daily life in two ways. First, it is always good to be able to blend into the social landscape, to avoid calling attention to yourself unless you choose to do so. When you talk and act like everyone else, mimicking their belief systems, when you blend into the crowd, you make it impossible for people to read anything particular in your behavior. Appearances are all that count here. Dress and talk like a businessman, and you must be a businessman. That gives you great room to move and plot without being noticed. Like a grasshopper on a leaf, you cannot be picked from your context. An excellent defense in times of weakness. Second, if you are preparing an attack of some sort and begin by blending into the environment, showing no sign of activity, your attack will seem to come out of nowhere, doubling its power. The hypnotic pattern. According to Machiavelli, human beings naturally tend to think in terms of patterns. They like to see events conforming to their expectations by fitting into a pattern or scheme. For schemes, whatever their actual content, comfort us by suggesting that the chaos of life is predictable. This mental habit offers excellent ground for deception, using a strategy that Machiavelli calls acclimatization, deliberately creating some pattern to make your enemies believe that your next action will follow true to form. Having lulled them into complacency, you now have room to work against their expectations, break the pattern, and take them by surprise. In the Six-Day War of 1967, the Israelis submitted their Arab enemies to a devastating and lightning-fast defeat. In doing so, they confirmed all their pre-existing military beliefs. The Arabs were undisciplined, their weaponry was outdated, and their strategies were stale. 6 years later, the Egyptian president Anwar Sadat exploited these prejudices in signaling that his army was in disarray and still humbled by its defeat in 1967, and that he was squabbling with his Soviet patrons. When Egypt and Syria attacked Israel on Yom Kippur in 1973, the Israelis were caught almost totally by surprise. Sadat had tricked them into letting down their guard. This tactic can be extended indefinitely. Once people feel you have deceived them, they will expect you to mislead them again, but they usually think you'll try something different next time. No one, they will tell themselves, is so stupid as to repeat the exact same trick on the same person. That, of course, is just when to repeat it, following the principle of always working against your enemy's expectations. Remember the example of Edgar Allan Poe's short story, The Purloined Letter. Hide something in the most obvious place, because that is where no one will look. Planted information. People are much more likely to believe something they see with their own eyes than something they are told. They are more likely to believe something they discover than something pushed at them. If you plant the false information you desire them to have with third parties in neutral territory, when they pick up the clues, they have the impression they are the ones discovering the truth. The more you can make them dig for their information, the more deeply they will delude themselves. During World War I, in addition to the infamous standoff on the Western Front, the Germans and the British fought a lesser-known battle for control of East Africa, where both sides had colonies. The man in charge of English intelligence in the area was Colonel Richard Meinertzhagen, and his main rival on the German side was an educated Arab. Meinertzhagen's job included feeding the Germans misinformation, and he tried hard to deceive this Arab, but nothing seemed to work. The two men were equals at the game. Finally, Meinertzhagen sent his opponent a letter. He thanked the Arab for his services as a double agent and for the valuable information he had supplied to the British. He enclosed a large sum of money and entrusted the letter's delivery to his most incompetent agent. Sure enough, the Germans captured this agent en route and found the letter. The agent, under torture, assured them that his mission was genuine, because he believed it was. Meinertzhagen had kept him out of the loop. The agent was not acting, so he was more than believable. The Germans quietly had the Arab shot. No matter how good a liar you are, when you deceive, it is hard to be completely natural. Your tendency is to try so hard to seem natural and sincere that it stands out and can be read. That is why it is so effective to spread your deceptions through people whom you keep ignorant of the truth, people who believe the lie themselves. When working with double agents of this kind, it is always wise to initially feed them some true information. This will establish the credibility of the intelligence they pass along. After that, they will be the perfect conduits for your lies. Shadows within shadows. Deceptive maneuvers are like shadows deliberately cast. The enemy responds to them as if they were solid and real, which in and of itself is a mistake. In a sophisticated, competitive world, however, both sides know the game, and the alert enemy will not necessarily grasp at the shadow you have thrown. So you have to take the art of deception to a level higher, casting shadows within shadows, making it impossible for your enemies to distinguish between fact and fiction. You make everything so ambiguous and uncertain, spread so much fog, that even if you are suspected of deceit, it does not matter. The truth cannot be unraveled from the lies, and all their suspicion gives them is torment. Meanwhile, as they strain to figure out what you are up to, they waste valuable time and resources. During the World War II desert battles in North Africa, the English Lieutenant Dudley Clark ran a campaign to deceive the Germans. One of his tactics was to use props, dummy tanks and artillery, to make it impossible for the Germans to figure out the size and location of the English army. From high-flying reconnaissance aircraft, these dummy weapons would photograph like the real thing. A prop that worked particularly well was the fake airplane made of wood. Clark dotted bogus landing fields filled up with rows of these around the landscape. At one point, a worried officer told him that intelligence had been intercepted, revealing that the Germans had figured out a way to distinguish the fake planes from the real ones. They simply looked for the wooden struts holding up the wings of the dummy planes. Enlarged photos could reveal this. They would now have to stop using the dummies, said the officer. But Clark, one of the great geniuses of modern deception, had a better idea. He decided to put struts under the wings of real aircraft as well as phony ones. With the original deception, the Germans were confused, but could eventually uncover the truth. Now, however, Clark took the game to a higher level. The enemy could not distinguish the real from the fake in general, which was even more disconcerting. If you are trying to mislead your enemies, it is often better to concoct something ambiguous and hard to read, as opposed to an outright deception. That deception can be uncovered, and enemies can turn their discovery to their advantage, especially if you think they are still fooled and act under that belief. You are the one doubly deceived. By creating something that is simply ambiguous, though, by making everything blurry, there is no deception to uncover. They are simply lost in a mist of uncertainty where truth and falsehood, good and bad, all merge into one. and it is impossible to get one's bearings straight.
And that was the 33 Strategies of War from Robert Greene. Next up, Donald Trump.
Mr. Trump, you've done great things in your life, and I just wonder, how do I, as an average person, begin?
Well, first of all, never think of yourself as average. You started off with the wrong question. You have to tell yourself that you just have to get that word average out of your vocabulary, and you have to tell yourself that you're great, and you have to believe it. If you can say it and don't believe it, it doesn't matter. So just go out there and work hard. Look, in the early 90s, I had a lot of trouble. We had a real estate collapse. Everybody was, half of my friends were going bankrupt. They were good builders, good developers. They were in deep trouble. I was in very deep trouble. I owed billions and billions of dollars. I never went bankrupt, but I'll tell you something. I certainly use the word a lot in terms of my own thought process. The fact is, you just have to keep on chugging. You have to keep going. And I had an expression. This was 1990. And I came up with an expression that was used by a lot of magazines, survive till 95. I had to survive. I survived till 95. And today my company is much bigger, much stronger, much everything. So if you focus, if you stay focused, if you know what you're doing, if you learn your subject, but if you really love what you're doing, you're going to succeed. You're going to succeed.
I guess I just wanted to find out if there was one thing that you wanted people to remember about Donald Trump. What is it?
Well, I think just generally, never, ever quit. I never quit. I may have made some mistakes and I may have made some bad decisions, but I never, ever quit. I never give up. And sometimes that persistence, I've seen so many people over the years that are so smart and they don't have that stick-to-itiveness. They just can't go the long rounds. And just if I can impart one thing, and there's so many, love what you do, know what you're doing, so many different things, but never, ever give up.
This sounds like political presidential talk to me, and I know people have talked to you about whether or not you want to run. Would you ever?
But, I just probably wouldn't do it. I probably wouldn't, but I do get tired of seeing what's happening with this country. And if it got so bad, I would never want to rule it out totally, because I really am tired of seeing what's happening with this country, how we're really making other people live like kings, and we're not.
Donald Trump, just last week, he confirmed to the National Review that he is again considering a run in 2016.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States, and we are going to make our country great again.
I accept your nomination to run and serve as Vice President of the United States of America.
Soundly. And we will make America great again. God bless you and good night. I love you.
Can you imagine Donald Trump standing up one day and delivering a State of the Union address?
Well, I can imagine it in a Saturday night skit.
Here we are. And which Republican candidate has the best chance of winning the general election?
Of the declared ones, right now, Donald Trump.
Donald Trump is not going to be president of the United States. Ever respectful of the fact that the people have not voted, he's not going to be president of the United States.
You're not going to be president, all right? It's been fun. It's been great. I love you.
I can continue to believe Mr. Trump will not be president.
Could I just cut through? I have one thing to say, one thing only, and that is that this race is over.
President Obama will go down as perhaps the worst president in the history of the United States! Exclamation point at real Donald Trump. Well, at real Donald Trump. At least I will go down as a president.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton. She congratulated us, it's about us, on our victory. And I can only say that while the campaign is over, our work on this movement is now really just beginning.
As President-elect,
And that was a little bit of Donald Trump. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Stuart Varney's My Take.
Markets. Now this. Liz Truss was Britain's Prime Minister. She lasted only 49 days. Writing in today's Wall Street Journal, she says she was done in by Britain's deep state. Her editorial is a warning to Donald Trump. If he's re-elected, says Truss, the deep state will come after him even more fiercely than in his first term. Truss is a conservative, and in her first days in office, she introduced a growth plan. Oh, how shocking. Britain's deep state prefers big government. They're all too often committed leftists. Her growth plan was sabotaged. Her warning is that the same thing will happen if Donald Trump gets a second term. Okay, Trump wants to expand oil and gas production. Oh, you think the bureaucrats at the Energy Department will go for that without a fight? They're climate guys. How about vast subsidies for electric vehicles? Trump's not keen, but the Environmental Protection Agency is gung-ho for anything green. They'll keep promoting and defending the Green New Deal forever. Tax cuts? No way. Spending cuts? Absolutely not. School choice? Oh, never forget what the deep state teachers union did during the pandemic. And then there's the Justice Department, which orchestrated the charges that keep Donald Trump tied up in court in the middle of a presidential election campaign. They're not going to give up. Truss's warning is a reminder that government bureaucrats on both sides of the Atlantic have real power, and they're not afraid to use it to impose their own view of the world, regardless of our elected officials. Second hour of Varney, just getting started.
So really what this is all about, deep state is just is a euphemism for government rights. This is all started again in 1900 with Herbert Crowley, who wrote a book called The Promise of American Life, in which he said that the government is not supposed to be a neutral third party, that it should be activist, that it should choose sides. That whenever the government does that, make no mistake about it, it is asserting rights that don't exist. Okay, so what can we do about this? Talk about it. Recognize it. Every time you see that the government is acting in a way in which they are not asked or prompted by the American people to act, and or acting in a way that is not authorized under the Constitution, see the 10th Amendment, then you're looking at government that thinks it has rights. The government's never going to concede and say, oh yes, we have rights. They're always going to hide it under something. Usually the term is compelling interest. But there's nothing in the Constitution that declares that the government has any such compelling interest. So again, summing up Stuart Varney's My Take, the real issue is government rights. The sooner we figure out that we have dueling rights in this country between the rights of the so-called rights of the government and the real rights of the people, the better. Then we can choose to have the rights of the people and restore the limited authority and responsibility of the government. Back in a minute. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you that you are not neutral and that the government has no rights.